we went to play the Army-Navy football game in the Rose Bowl.
Right.
And one of my plebe roommates, he had the idea later, Dana Miller and I and about two other cadets, we all had the same idea, independent of each other, to write a note to Hugh Hefner. I didn't know a soul west of the Mississippi, so I wrote Hugh Hefner a note and said, hey, can I stay with you while I'm out there? Well, he wrote us back and said yes. So, of course, I got my place I'm going to stay. It went up the chain of command. They denied it. Even Casper Weinberger got involved, I was told. He wrote us all a note saying, good initiative, you cannot stay. It's not a family environment, but you can visit.
Welcome to the Courage Never Quits podcast, where members of the West Point class of 1986 tell their stories. I'm your host, Paul LaFontaine. My guest today is Jimmy Jenkins, column number 43-311. We'll hear about Jimmy's approach to studying and why he has 2 West Point rings. As always, the views expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and not of West Point, the Army, or any organization, most particularly Blue Halo. James Herman Jenkins III, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I just had to hit you with the name. I mean, that's an outstanding name.
I didn't think so. Herman doesn't go over very well when you're in second grade.
No, that's right. But I think for the purpose of the podcast, can we call you Jimmy?
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul.
Good. All right, good. Yep. That's a mouthful, the starting point there.
Yeah.
Alabama. You're living in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little about that. What? So you're still gainfully employed and doing good work. What's going on with you?
Well, so my last combat deployment, I was a brigade commander, and I was on orders to go to the Pentagon, and we were fairly excited about getting to the D.C. area. It had been our third time going back, and this 3-star came out and visited my brigade, and the next day I get a note saying my orders are changed. You're coming to Huntsville, Alabama. I'm like, what the heck happened? So I got diverted. I was an air defender, but the field artillery community kind of took over and came here to be the chief of staff at the Space and Missile Defense Command. And after being here for a few months, it really was the best assignment for my young kids. I had 2 kids at West Point, and I had 2 kids that were going into high school. Tough decision I ever made was to say, okay, this is going to be it. I still had a lot of gas in the tank for the military, but particularly for the family environment, we'd had 17 moves. So Huntsville was a pretty good place. It was just starting to grow at that time. This is 13 years ago. And it was really beneficial for my 2 younger kids to go to one high school and really fit in, where my 2 older boys had been to 3 high schools or 2 high schools respectively. And it just, it was the best thing for my family. And it turned out it was great for my industry career too, to get out at that time and make that tough decision.
If I looked at your LinkedIn, it seems to have you seem to have benefited a bit from that. That's great. So you're working for a company, what's Blue Halo? That's an independent subsidiary?
Well, we're a private equity backed company. We have tailor-built, kind of purposely built this company to be really good at counter UAS, shooting down drones, and with various means, and space command and control, with a lot of other things wrapped around it. But we're really kind of best in class at that. And you probably saw the announcement last week where we were purchased or going to do a merger with Air Environment. And we were very excited about that because we were on a path to become a publicly traded company.
Right.
And this helps us get there faster. So
the faster path is always much more pleasant when it comes to these matters, I guarantee you.
Yeah. You have experience in that, yes.
As much as being a public company is enjoyable for some. So congratulations.
Yeah.
What does that mean for you as in a practical matter? You'll stay there and everything as far as you know, right?
Yeah. I'm in a great role. I love it most days. And my intent is to stay for a period of time.
Right.
And assuming all that works out, but I think they want me to. We will find that out soon enough, though. So
you're a director. What does a director do? What does your day look like?
Well, I'm the president and general manager of what we call the Armed Forces portfolio. So I run most of the business that we do in the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, basically all that business. So I'm in probably 10 or 12 states now. really focused on counter UAS, a lot of training capabilities. We have quite a few service programs, kind of not CETA for those that know that word, but really kind of engineer services in Air Force Research Lab, Army Central Command, MDA, PO Missiles in Space. I got them spread out around the country.
Yeah.
And so I have these kind of multi-pronged portfolio of lots of very cool things, including the Army's really cool, very strategic space control program. So
Well,
it's
shooting down unmanned aerial systems is kind of a very topical thing these days. So you're
oh
right on
yes,
the cutting edge.
I think we are. We have really tried to to bring to bear all the assets you might need to in a layered defense to get after that threat, because one system just can't do it. It's got to be kind of a layered approach, and
Yeah.
we're pretty good at doing that these days.
How many employees work for you in your?
Well, there are 2,500 in Blue Halo. I probably have 800 or so in my portfolio. It does move around some as we continue to grow with acquisitions, and also as we continue to reorganize and put things in better places, or try to.
So I guess that's about brigade size. You've kept that responsibility up. Good for
Yeah,
you. That's
yeah.
fantastic. Now, I guess the boy from Bennettsville makes good.
Oh, I tried. I tried. It's funny. When I didn't plan on going. I didn't know what West Point was,
Right.
and my high school history teacher, my junior year, came up to me, John Townsend. He said, "Hey, what do you think about going to West Point? Because John Napier just won. Was going to win the congressional seat, and he beat a guy that was very famous in our time named John Jenneret. And John Jenneret had been pulled in the Abscam trials. You might remember that term.
Yeah.
His wife, John Jenneret's wife, posed naked on the Capitol steps during this whole time. It was a kind of a chaotic. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I said, "What is it? Isn't West Point some kind of military college?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Is it a 2-year college?" He said, "No, it's 4 years." I said, "Oh, how much does it cost?" He said, "It's free." I said, "Well, I'm in." And that's the only reason I went to West Point, because it was free. I had no idea what I was getting into. And so when I started doing research, it turns out in my county, only 2 other people had ever gone to West Point. One went in 1890 and they didn't finish, and another one graduated in 1973. And I actually went and met that guy's father
Right.
before I went to kind of get a little intel about what I was getting into. So it was, my little poor county in South Carolina, just it was tough at getting people. Didn't mean they didn't necessarily have the skill set, but they weren't really prepared academically
Yeah.
to get ready
And
to do that.
so, what was your specialty in high school? Were you an athlete? Were you an academician? What was your?
I was a little bit of both. I played football in my senior year. I was the number 1 kid on the tennis team. I never won a single match. It was I was
But
playing.
the foam finger still said number one. Doesn't
I
matter
was
what
number
the
one, but
record was.
I could not beat any other number 1 kid on any team. Uh, um, and I was very I wasn't very athletic, but I liked to be very into it. Water skiing was my best sport. I actually thought very seriously about going to Cypress Gardens. My dad and I visited there to become a professional water skier, but
Oh wow.
uh, I just when you're 18, you don't know, right? And I meet this guy, and he's like 25. I said, "So what do you ski?" He says, "I'm done. This is a young man's sport." So I just coach now. I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to do something where I'm done at 25. I
25.
better
Yeah.
go get an education and try something different. So,
Right.
but
So
yeah,
so
yeah.
going a long term profession like the profession of arms. So,
Hmm. Yes.
that's great. So the first or the third who at least went on from your county. How did you find the experience when you got there?
I was shocked to my core of what have I gotten myself into.
Right.
And it's actually we hosted a Veterans Day lunch up. We always do. And last week I kind of shared the story because we had a few classmates of ours in the audience
Yeah.
at my office. And I was a really poor cadet. I was actually a terrible cadet because I had a bad attitude. And I became kind of a rebel. because I just didn't. At the time, I was immature. I didn't believe in the system. Uh, and when all of us left high school, we were pretty good in high school. We were at some level. You get to West Point, and it's humbling to a unhealthy degree in some capacities. You're like, wow, I am below average in this group of men and women that are around me.
Right.
But I did this stupid experiment first semester of plebe year. I said, I'm not going to study, and let's see how this goes. And I got a 2.6, and I said, okay, I can
Okay.
make it through West Point, and I don't have to put much effort into it. What a terrible attitude. And it never improved the entire 4 years. I thought maybe
Right.
I'd grow up sometime. I only grew up after West Point, and that was probably marginally, but I finally got motivated to improve myself. But
Your howitzer entry is quite unique. Who wrote that? Do you remember?
yeah, I imagine Jay Larson wrote it.
Right.
Jay and I were roommates multiple times, and one of my best friends in the world.
Jay, if assuming it was Jay, wrote one of the best lines I've seen in any of them. Jimmy was able to convert Mama Brava's pizza into muscle.
I definitely consumed a few of those pizzas, and I was
That's
blessed to be fit. In Beast, I gained 20 pounds in Beast Barracks.
Did you really?
I was a rare guy that I could do a ton of push-ups. I was really good at that, and I ate everything in sight. I was the guy that would gladly eat the bread on the bottom of the bacon pan, when you do a
Right.
white Russian. I got that down, or what we call a white. What was the term you used when you had to eat everything on the table? I can't. White tornado or something.
White tornado. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I gladly eat all the stuff no one else wanted. I just
And what was B2 like as a plebe?
B2 to me was a pretty terrible experience. I had a couple seniors, one in particular that just picked me out and decided to make it his mission to run me out of that school.
Yeah.
And it's also what kind of led me to believe that there's got to be a better model than this. You can make a guy or gal tough and resilient without having to completely demean, demoralize, and sometimes some cases permanently affect. I'm well over that, but at the time I was very bitter about it, and I said, I don't understand this system. Now, I actually kept that person's name in the back of my mind in case I ever saw him in the battlefield in a Desert Storm, but didn't find him. Luckily for him, but it's just that experience. Now, there were some great guys in that company though, and it's where you start forming those friendships and bonds that really get you past that. And I remember it was during reorg week, and you're in your new companies, it's chaos. And I won't mention his name, but I'm standing in line for the payphone. And the guy in front of me, I can hear him. You could always hear the conversation in front of you. And he's like, "Mom and Dad, I'm coming home. I hate this place. I can't stand it." And his dad said, "If you quit, you're not welcome at home." And I watched it just suck the life out of this guy.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was next in line. I had the same line. And so I tell my mom, I said, "Mom," and I said, I do not like it. I don't fit in. I don't think I'm going to make it. I think I'm going to come home. And my mom says, "Oh, please come home. I still have your applications to UNC and Clemson and South Carolina. They're all right here on the table. They're waiting for you to come sign. You can start all over." And I hung up the phone, and I was walking back to my room, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, if I quit, no one in Marlboro County or Bennettsville will think that, it just wasn't for me. They'll say Jimmy couldn't hack it. And I can't live with that. So I said, damn it, I'm stuck. I'm not going anywhere.
Right. Rats.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, there had to be an element. We all with our parents, when your mom say, "Oh, that's a great idea," you say, "Oh, wait a minute, that's she seemed a little too eager. I might want to rethink it." Right?
She wanted her boy back, closer than 650 miles away. Yeah.
So your no studying program, was that a long-term play, or did you decide to crack open a book by yearling year?
Oh gosh, well, you just jogged a memory. One of my roommates yearling year was a guy named Skeeter. They kicked him out for trafficking drugs that year. But
there's some things that they didn't allow back then.
Yeah, his name was Marquette. We made a bet who could keep their econ book in the cellophane wrapper longer, and they'd win a pizza. So I went into the final, and my book was still in the wrapper. I had an F. I took the book out. I read the entire book. I made a 98 on the final, got a C in the class, and I was so excited. And it's just
Really?
that poor attitude continued. I mean, poor Mark Connor, because I picked a very terrible major. I had a double major in electrical engineering and management, and Mark Connor was my roommate junior year, and God bless him. I would go up to him and say, "Hey, you finished your double E homework?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Can I see it?" I would copy it word for word. I would write the acknowledgement statement that
Of
I
course.
copied this word for word from Mark Connor. I understand 10% of it. I'd get a C minus. He'd get a B plus, and he'd be so mad at me because I was
Right.
like, I just hadn't grown up.
But you
And
drop a little nugget there, Jimmy, that I have to kind of laser in on, right? So
yeah,
you have the keep the book in the cellophane program. You have the no studying program as a plebe, and you choose a double major with electrical engineering.
yeah, I had this stupid idea that if at 26-year-old, I'll be managing electrical engineers and I'll be a millionaire. Because I had a math. I'm a math oriented guy.
Okay.
I was pretty poor in English. I got a lot better. Obviously, you have to there. You don't survive.
Yeah.
But math always cared me. And I remember I had a cousin, a fourth cousin, who was a school teacher there, Bill Fox.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother had connected us, and he taught math. And he came up to me year and said, "You're ranked 25th in your class in math." We were taking Diffie Qs there. I said, and poor Jimmy. I said, "Damn, I got to cut back some. I must be putting too much effort in this because
Right.
I just did. It was one of my skills. When we went, remember the finals we took, Christmas time, plebe year,
Uh-huh.
just in your most miserable time. You cannot wait to go home. At least I was this way, right? And my last final was math, and I knew that whatever somehow I'd done, if I got a 90 on the test, I would have a decent grade, like a B. And there were 10 questions on the test. I did 9 questions in 35 minutes and turned my paper in. And I'm starting to walk out. Of course, like no one finishes a 4-hour exam or 2 hours, however long it was, in 35 minutes.
Right.
He said, "Hey, you forgot to do number 10." I said, "I don't need to do number 10. I got the first 9 right." And then I left the class.
Right.
But you're probably getting to. I tried to change my major to either systems engineering or something along that line, which I was much more keen on, that kind of math. But they
Yeah.
wouldn't let me
Right.
change. They said, "No, you picked it. You're going to suffer through it." And it was what it was. But once I graduated, the thing that really changed me was I went to airborne school, like a lot of us did after graduation. And I took a month of leave in the hole so I could have 60 days off. And I go there. I had torn my shoulder out in rugby senior year, so I was still recovering from that. I needed all the time I could so I could do push-ups again. And at airborne school, the company commander of our little trooper there, whatever we called it,
The stick, I
was
think it was called.
yeah, our stick. He was a Medal of Honor winner from Vietnam, and he was an American Indian. And I don't remember his name. I wish I could go look him up, and one day I might. But he gave us this speech of basically you all. And everyone's always told me this, but from some reason, him saying it made a difference. He says you're responsible for how you want to turn out. Whatever effort you put in is what's going to make the difference for who you are. No one's going to give it to you. You got to decide what kind of person you want to be in this world. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And
Sage advice. Yeah.
I flipped that day. And from that point on, I was going to apply myself academically and professionally the best of my ability in each case. So every course I took from that point on, I was either number 1 or 2 or 3 in the class. My grad school, 4.0. So I just was driven now, and I was motivated. Okay, enough of the stupidity, Jimmy. Let's grow up. And in that next few years, definitely, you hope that happens everywhere.
And that's what the academy's for. It allows you to explore some of the kind of wackier theories we have as 19-year-olds around
Yeah.
workload. And I had my own version of that for sure. H1, what a company though. I actually was good friends with John at the time Wilson, now Wildman.
Yes.
John Landgraf was my alphabetical, was alphabetically next to me. So I'm still friends with John to this day. Both Johns.
Yeah.
Great group. Dexter Monroe. You had a great
Yeah.
group in that company.
It's funny. Two of those three guys you mentioned, I room with.
Yeah.
Dexter was my sophomore roommate. And I'll tell you an interesting story about him and John. And then Wildman was my roommate when we were seniors for, I think, first semester. Just loved the death out of those guys. We had a great company. We still have a great company. We get to, like a lot of companies. I think what I'm watching that you get together at your company a lot more, right? You have these little events, and it continues to grow that bond stronger and stronger. I kind of a good and yeah, Dexter's a wonderful guy. He lives in South Carolina now. We get together every now and then and catch up. I miss him. I'll tell you a funny John Landgraf story there, since you mentioned it.
Sure.
And I'll try to make it short. But when we were cows, I think we were cows, maybe we were firsties, but we decided to go to Killington, Vermont to snow ski. And, of course, typical cadets, we don't carpool. We only want to drive our own cars, right? Because we got our own cars. We're going to drive.
You got a car. You got to use it.
Yeah. So there are like 5 or 6 of us, trucking along. And we hear on the radio there's a 50-car pileup on the interstate ahead. And so I got a map out. I said, hey, I think we can take this trail over this mountain and get to our site. So we did. We went over a mountain logging road. And Harris Clark, a Louisiana boy, had his 280Z, and he slid into a snowbank, and he was stuck. So we're there. It's 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and don't know who you're going to call, right? There's no cell phones in those days. So I said, well, let's go see if there's something around here that could help. So I walked down the hill about a quarter mile, half a mile, and all the logging tractors are there. And so I found one of them that I thought might work, and I hot-wired it, got it turned on. I drove it back up the mountain. I pushed Harris's car out of the snowbank, and we didn't do any damage to it. Took the tractor back, and off we went, having a great time. So fast forward the next day, I'm a average at best skier, probably below average, and I lost control going down the mountain, and I took this guy out. I didn't mean to. I was like, and I get up. I'm so sorry. And the guy starts wanting to fight me, and he's starting to poke me with his one of his sticks. And John Landgraf, Captain America, man, comes flying down the mountain, gets right between us, and says, hey, you better leave my friend alone. And that ended it. It just completely diffused. It was great John to the rescue, as he always was, as kind of his persona.
Which is why to this day I still ski with John. And he actually told me that story when we were on the lift in Vail.
Oh, really?
He did. He told all about that. But he also added, and I'll add this piece, that you all left money for the gas you used in that tractor with the tractor because you were good cadets and you'd use fuel and you wanted to make sure you'd make good on it. So
we did. I'd kind of forgotten about it. The thing I worried about is, did I disconnect the battery? I've always worried about it this day because I had to reconnect everything. I was like, oh, gosh.
I think it turned out okay.
Yeah.
What a story, though. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What'd you do? So rugby, you made mention of rugby.
I so wish I'd started earlier. The brotherhood that exists on a rugby team, I'm sure it's like other sports. I just don't know. I played 150s as a plebe. It was a great experience, but it wasn't the same as the rugby was. And so I got asked kind of, hey, when we were out at Buckner during that summer, hey, why don't you come try for the rugby team? And so I did, and I played hooker. I just loved it. Now, I was not a good rugby player. I didn't know the rules, and so I applied American football tackling to it.
Yeah.
I got a couple concussions during that year. I broke 12 bones. A couple of them, I broke 3 ribs twice. I saw my cast off my wrist for the Army-Navy game in November of that year, so we could play. We beat them 10-9. It was worth it, although I got an 8-8 for it. So it was that camaraderie and the fun that we had and that group of guys will live with me forever. And, we now have little mini rugby reunions, and I've dragged my wife back there to a couple of them.
Kelly, good friend from my plebe days, we still stay in touch. He was headed back to visit with you guys this year. You guys had a get together, I think, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
talk about who gave you an 8 and 8 for sawing off your cast for the Navy match? I mean, come on, that is really uncharitable.
That was our tack. I know I was not his favorite cadet, but I deserved it somewhat. I went into uh, grad week with 92 hours,
Really?
and I thought I'm going to make it. I'm not going to be a century man, and I skipped my last class and got an 8 and 8. So I was marching area tours when my mom was there for graduation, and
You marched all the way up to graduation.
yep. And I just figured what are they going to do, and they figured out what they were going to do. But and I had no intent of being a century man at that point, but I became one.
Some view it as a badge of honor. I think it's a credit to you. You thought you might make it not having to become one, but they got you in the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And what was the source of all the malfeasances? Did they just stack up over time, or did you have a big one?
I think the biggest one was I got caught standing by a girl in my PT uniform behind a building when I was a junior. I probably got 20 hours for that.
That proximity alone will get you.
Proximity, yeah. And we weren't doing anything, at least not yet. But
Well,
I was in PT attire, and can't do that.
can't do
So
that, Jimmy.
Jay and I got busted sophomore year for something, and I'll tell you a funny, real quick story. So it was Jay and sadly Sid Smith. We were all roommates first semester, and God bless his soul. But we were in room con for some reason. I can't remember why we had room con, and we had found some liquor behind New South Barracks. Old grads would bury it up there, and we go find stuff. It was kind of unique, and so we're on room con. It's right towards.
Just found it.
Yeah, just happened to be there, and it's right before bedtime, so we're in our jammies and we're drinking straight bourbon out of coffee cups.
Yeah.
And Sid Smith is fired up because he knows he might get in trouble. So there's a knock on the door, and I'm the alphabetical ranking person, so I say, "Enter, sir." In walks the duty officer of the day, the tactical officer, a captain, and they say, "Hey, I'm going to turn around. We're going to try that again." And so they walk out, look over at Jay, and look over at Sid. I said, "Am I doing anything wrong? I got my coffee cup in my left hand. I'm saluting with my right. I can't remember what I was doing." "You did everything right." So they walk in. I go, "Enter, sir." And I say, "Sir, Cadet Jenkins reports as ordered. That's the room, whatever it was." And so I'm going to try one more time. And so they walk back out, and they walk in. And this time I notice, oh, God, ma'am, Cadet Jenkins reports. And, she was clearly a female, but we had drank so much. And she said, "I tell you what, Cadet Jenkins," because she knew that we were up to shenanigans.
Yeah.
And this is how cool she was. I don't remember who she was. She said, "I'm going to come back in about an hour, and you guys better be in bed asleep. And all these lights off and everything that's in this room that's not supposed to be
Everything in order. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we did. I thought, thank God, because we could have got crushed for that, obviously. So I just trickled up to that. Long answer to your question, but
No,
generate some new memories.
That's good. At what point did you know air defense artillery was for you?
Well, it really wasn't. It was my third choice. But when you do these academic experiments,
These experiments tend to get you routed in a certain direction.
I know. All I wanted to be was an aviator, and
Yeah.
I went down junior year. A few of us got to go fly helicopters. Got your solo wings and a TH-55.
Oh, you did that, right?
I really applied myself. I did well in that class, in that course. That did not matter. It was all about academics, and I was ranked, not definitely in the bottom half of our class. So you get what you get.
Yeah.
And it was okay. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise. I loved being an air defender. It was
Well,
always.
You seem to have applied yourself enough to achieve higher ranks, and look at where it got you now. So, what was your first assignment?
I got either Bliss or Bliss, so I went to Fort Bliss, Texas. That was all that's left. It was my turn to pick.
Yeah.
They call it Bliss high to medium air defense, or Bliss short range air defense. I got short range, and went to a separate battalion, and then finally got into the 3rd ACR when I was there, which was a wonderful tour. And then Desert Storm broke. I got pulled out of the captain's career course to go to 1st Infantry Division.
Okay.
luckily, it still graduated me a month early
Okay.
and continued on to serve.
And what did you do in Desert Storm when they sent you over there?
I was basically the planner for the battalion and the assistant S3. So I ran our TOC that would forward deploy. It was a, it was also like those things are life changing moments. You decide what's important in life,
Yep.
and what are you going to focus on. And I really tried to turn much more into a balanced approach of my family's got to matter a heck of a lot more than I've been letting it matter. And I had a little kid. My first child was born January 1st. I got on a plane January 6th.
Wow.
Actually, my battalion commander let me stay back to
Right.
see him born. And he's born at Air Force Base in Minot, North Dakota. And off I went. So my wife stayed there with her mom and dad, and came home to see him I only saw him for a few days rather, and then
Yeah, right.
see him when he's 5.5 months old.
Well, let's talk about you were married on December 30th. Is that right? Or is that, I saw that on Facebook. Did you,
Yep, that's
you were
correct.
married
Yep.
1989. What was the story? Your wife Mary and you got married on December 30th, 1989.
So we'd gotten engaged that summer. I met my wife to be within a few months of showing up to the officer basic course. She and a lot of other North Dakota ladies actually had been recruited to come teach in El Paso, Texas from North Dakota.
Okay.
And we met him, and I met her at an Army Navy football game party at
Really?
one of my
Well,
friends'
that's a
house.
great start for any
Yeah, it
relationship.
was a great story. And her version of the story is a lot more eloquent than mine. But just say we became friends, and for 2 or 3 years, I would not date her. She was very nice, and I just didn't want to date nice women at that time. But we stayed friends. We stayed in touch. And finally, I said, let's try this out. I had to grow up again, right? I had to go through some more growing up moments. And we picked that date. Well, first, you get married wherever your wife lives, North Dakota,
Right.
because everyone would be around. All the family could easily potentially get there. Now, my family had never, been that far west. None of them had. We got married in a Catholic church. My wife's Catholic. I was Protestant. That was a fun story in itself. But those were the days too where, there were no real gates, particularly in North Dakota. You got off the airplane, walked downstairs, walked across the tarmac, and when they arrived,
Right.
the temperature was about -10. The chill factor was about -40 or 50. They had no idea what these South Carolina boys and girls are getting into in North Dakota, but we had a great time, and been happily married for 35 years. In December will be 35 years.
And 4 children.
4 wonderful children, right?
Okay, so when I look at your Facebook, I see a lot of uniforms, not just
Yep.
yours, but you have two sons. So talk
Mhm.
through the two sons that went to West Point.
Yeah, so my two boys, Hunter, he's my oldest, and he's class of 13, and my middle son, Michael, he's class of 16. So Michael really was the catalyst. Michael, from an early age, 3 or 4, he loved kind of the military mystique of it all, and he wanted to go to West Point. He said it from the moment he could really articulate what that was. I'm going to West Point. And funny, he only applied to one school, West Point, and I gave him a lot of grief that, son, this is not the best way. But so a little bit behind that is my older son Hunter was being recruited to play football a lot of places, included the academies, primarily as a walk-on because I'd moved him so much. But so we went and visited the Air Force Academy as a family, and they treat him pretty well. And he's like, he leans to Michael, if I go here, will you come join me here? And Michael says, no, I'm going to West Point, period. So my older son goes to West Point, and I say this, I think he went waiting for his brother to show up. And Michael had some, he had some physical challenges he had to get over from his medical. But once we got through all that, they said, we're going to send you to prep school first. And he said, I'm not going to prep school. I said, son, you need prep school because you're also really good in math, but you need help in writing. So he did. And that was the first year that prep school was at West Point. So here, my older son now is a junior. Is that right? And Michael is at prep school as a prepster. And so they spent a lot of time together. Michael got to know a lot of his classmates. He'd go visit him a lot. And then when Hunter was a senior, Michael's a plebe. and it was great. So one of our reunions occurred when my boys were juniors and prepsters, and brought them over to Patton's On and a lot of the other events that weekend. It really snowed, you might remember, during that weekend for our
I do
reunion.
remember that. Yeah.
But I think Michael was more the catalyst of it, but the rigor and the just that they it's good and bad in my perspective, Paul, in that like 87% of the men and women that are in the military are families of legacy, right? And
Right.
so it's so much more of America is not participating in this. What I think we need to have a broader sense. But that being said, it was I was excited for them, but I was also anxious for them, knowing what they were getting into because we'd been through it, right? And so Hunter became an aviator, and
Okay.
I will tell you this: when you have a son or daughter that deploys into combat, he was a medevac pilot in northern Afghanistan. You really focus on, okay, what are we fighting for? Why are we fighting? Why are we putting our men and women in harm's way? It better be a damn good reason, and we better have an end state in mind. You get to that. Okay, well, you send me all you want. You start sending my
Right.
kid, and so really, I looked through that lens a lot more carefully. Then Michael became a combat engineer, went to Ranger School. He served 8 years. They both served 8 years and got out about that point. I think the Army is going through an interesting time, as all the services. And I get from them, their perspectives on leadership in the Army today versus our time. But I was really excited for him. My daughter, thinking, okay, I got to follow the family business. She went up to the summer leadership seminar, summer program for
Right.
juniors in high school. And she'd been at Girl State, so she got there a little late. So she shows up at 11 o'clock at night of that week. And she calls me the next day, and she's like, Dad, I know you don't want to hear this. I do not like it here. I said, fine. I do not want you to go.
Sure.
You got to want to go. And I am perfectly happy. I'm more than happy that you don't want to go. I don't want to ever have you think that you got to go to make Dad happy. So she went to Auburn, became a mechanical engineer, and it's done great since. And then my younger son, John, he was heavily recruited by all the academies. Air Force Academy was in my kitchen every week.
And what was
Coach
his
Ken,
specialty? Was he a good athlete?
he was a really good athlete. He was a middle linebacker. And he was also very good academically. And so he had kind of all that. And then Navy Academy, Coach Ken wrote him a handwritten note every Saturday his entire junior year. And I thought,
Really?
wow, this is such a classy act. So he's like, West Point never called him, never did a thing. So I called one of our friends and said, what's going on? He said, well, they look at him as a blue chip athlete. He's a legacy. He's coming here no matter what. We don't have to put any time into it. It's brothers
Yeah,
way.
right. Those turkeys.
And yeah, and so I said, son, don't go.
Yeah.
Because the Ivy League started calling, and he had a chance to go play football at Harvard and get that education. I said, this is a no-brainer decision.
There you
There are no
go.
scholarships there at the Ivy Leagues. I said, but I got my GI Bill. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so he played football there 4 years.
No
But
kidding.
he
Good
was
for
willing to
him.
go to one of the academies. He was ready to go.
And what did he? Where did that take him after he graduated?
He got an economics degree, and he's now an investment banker at a bank down in Birmingham, Alabama.
There you go. See that? That's what
Yeah.
you get West Point for just banking on him being a legacy.
Yeah, I know.
Now he's
I
doing
was
his kind of
disappointed.
banking.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, yeah.
So let's go through your career a little bit. You talked about Desert Storm. I think we were all in some sort of staff positions for Desert Storm or XOs because that was just the timing of it. After that, where did your career take you after Desert Storm?
So went back to Fort Riley, Kansas. Was a battery commander there for a while. My second son, my second son was born, Michael, the common engineer. He was born with a cleft lip and palate, and so we had to make some good choices about what to do. And so we went to Fort Bragg. I forced myself to Fort Bragg because my family was there, thinking it would help. And but it didn't turn out as well as we hoped. I was a test parachutist and an ORSA, so I went through the operations research course.
Okay.
Again, now I'm back to applying myself. So graduated well there, and I like that kind of math. Then became an aide up in D.C. against my will, and got pulled into PERSCOM after that for a couple of years. It was fun. I got the task to. You might remember Task Force 21, where we were trying to revamp the whole entire system, where we created the functional areas. So I got tasked, figure out a way to implement this, and brief the Chief of Staff of the Army in 4 months. So it was a really cool project to how are we going to do career field designation, and got to lead that effort for 2 years. Went to CGSC, got signed to First Cav as a major. I did our major time there, a very great assignment. Went back to PERSCOM as the Major's and Lieutenant Colonel Assignment Officer for Air Defenders. Got battalion command.
Well, that's not a bad place to be. You certainly get to know people.
Yeah, you're clearly with a lot of hand-picked officers across the branches, and those relationships still to this day are strong. Matter of fact, probably some of my strongest, because many of those men and women have risen to be senior leaders, and are still senior leaders in the military from that time. So I did really enjoy it. It's just, you see the dark side of the Army a little bit when you're in those roles where it involves people. But you also see the good side of it too.
I was having coffee this morning with some really old grads. We're not there yet, but 60s, 62 to 74, and one of them was in mil%, he was calling it, but he was talking about some of that dark side. So I get what you're saying there. Because you see the whole range of outcomes.
Yeah, you do. I put a sign on my desk called "Sponsor the Unsponsored," and my senior rater loved it. Thank God, because it could be a conflict. It was like,
well, you would have become unsponsored.
Yeah, and it was like, only a handful of people have someone really pulling them through their career, right? The rest of us are just making it. I got to help out those guys and gals that the best of my ability, and get them plum assignments that may or may not help them if they wanted to. So it was very rewarding in that regard. I enjoyed those tours. They went off to. I actually slated myself to a Patriot Battalion because I'd been short range air defense all my life. By bad coincidence, during that period, after the slate was approved, the Army decided to cut all the divisional air defense battalions. We eventually got every one of those guys that were selected into battalion command that wanted it. But I actually assigned myself to Bliss a year early so I could start to learn which end of the Patriot missile to point at the enemy and get to know that weapon system. And the guy I was replacing got fired a year early. So I went in command a year early, and great experience. Stayed an extra year at Fort Bliss. I went off to the War College, did a joint assignment back at Fort Bliss for JTF North. Really cool assignment. Then went to Brigade Command. I was a 69th Air Defense Brigade Commander out of Fort Hood. Deployed my second year in command to command most of the air defense in the Middle East. It was the premier assignment of my entire life. I felt that everything I had done in the military prepared me to do the best I could do that year.
It all came together in that year.
It did. And I mean, all those ones are very rewarding, but that was a very professionally rewarding year. I remember coming back home, and I told my wife, I said, okay, if they kick me out now, I'm okay.
Right.
I've tried to do my part. Right. And so, but then this assignment came, as we talked about earlier.
Right. But it's a tremendous good luck, as well as hard work, to feel yourself completely engaged with all your skills that you've built from age 18 on, right? And most of us don't get it. A few of us have. I've had the experience of it, and it's amazing when you say everything I've ever done is participating right now in my understanding of how to handle this situation. So that's good for you to have had that experience.
Thank you. I'm glad you see it too. It was very powerful. It's it's kind of like that. You self-actualize, right? I self-actualize really.
Yeah, that's what it is. But you can't explain it to another person who hasn't or doesn't understand, that bit. Yeah, good for you. And what rank did you ended up when you retired? You were
Colonel.
Colonel. Good for you.
My last job in the Army was actually the deputy commander for SMDC out at in Colorado Springs, Peterson Air Force Base. But that was a one-star billet, but I was colonel. So it was great job.
So what years you retired, just to catch us up on what you've been doing?
I was a few months shy of 28 years. I retired in 2014.
28 years of service.
Mm-hmm.
2 children in the military, 4 great children. What a run what a run you're having. And you're currently right in the thick of it.
Yes, it's. I'm looking forward to that next stage of life. You know, we call it
Yeah.
retired. Retired. I don't know that I'll ever be retired. Retired. I have too much energy. I definitely will consult or do something, or maybe some other door will open. I'm very, very blessed. Lord has blessed me that there are a lot of doors He's opened. I didn't even know were there. Um, and I just got to have the courage to go, open it and walk in. And so I've been blessed in that manner, and I'll just keep. I'll see what He's got in store for me next. This ride's not over, but it's. I can see a
Yeah.
light that something I will transition in some capacity in a
You engage in
couple of years.
something different. There's 54,000 living graduates, and I can't speak for all of them, but I can say by our very natures, we tend to not retire. It has nothing to do with working for people. It's just we're engaged in everything. So we
Yeah.
talk to our classmates who have stepped back from commercial work, off their go. They're volunteering. They're at their church. They're at their local community center, whatever they're doing. So you never slow down. That's great. What do
Yeah.
you all do for fun? What do the Jenkins family do for enjoyment?
Well, we're pretty active. Of late, we've been going snow skiing in the wintertime, different parts of Colorado as a family a few times.
There you go.
We're very big water skiers. So now my kids are growing and kind of spread out a little bit, but I got grandkids, so we're going to get them.
Nice.
My
Yeah, I
oldest
see
boy
a lot of. How many of those do you have?
I got 6.
6
We have 6.
grandchildren.
Yeah. And I got still 2 kids to marry off, so I'm looking forward to this number growing some. We're looking at trying to start like family vacations around the holidays. It might be easiest for the kids because when they have kids, all my grandkids are 7 and under. They're in that part of life where they don't have a life, right? It's all revolving around keeping the kids safe and then whatever they got to do. So we got to go to them, and it's. I know it's challenging to try to say, hey, everyone come to Dad's house.
Right.
So we try to balance that. I mean, this Thanksgiving, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and we'll have 2 kids home. My older boy will come join us on Friday because he's got to work. And then Christmas, I'll have the other kid home.
And then what's your geographic distribution of the family now? You've got.
So we're in Huntsville.
Yeah.
My oldest boy is in Chattanooga, works for Amazon. My middle son, Michael, the one that was common engineer, he's going to graduate Northwestern's Kellogg MBA program next month.
Okay.
And he's going to go to Atlanta.
Okay.
My daughter, she's the one from Auburn, and she's in Texas. She's in Midland, Texas, works for Exxon. She'll probably go back to Houston at some point. That's where she started. And then my youngest son, John, is in Birmingham, Alabama, as the investment banker.
So when you bring them all together, it's kind of an event because they're coming from all over.
They're coming from all over. And I've had this grand plan to get 1 or 2 of them here. I've been unsuccessful so far, but I'm getting them closer. Within easy driving distance.
I guarantee you that next phase for you is you and Mary on the road.
Exactly. And it's kind of that way. Every free moment we have, Paul, we go to a kid in some capacity. So that's kind of what we're doing now. We're trying to balance, okay, who goes where, when, and how do we match all those schedules?
Right on.
So, the old saying, ring knockers. I can never be a ring knocker because after we graduated, I remember I took a couple months off and stayed in South Carolina. I like water skiing. So I was barefoot water skiing, showing off to the girls there that were in the nearby vicinity. I fell and lost my ring in my hometown lake. And we dove for it. We never found it. So I never had a ring my entire career.
Right.
And after I retired, my stepfather passed away, and he left every kid $2,500. And my wife said, look, you've always wanted your ring. Won't you take that money and get your ring? So I called Balfour up. They still had my original handwritten copy in pencil of what my ring was like. I said, I want that exact ring. And it cost $2,500. I think I paid $700 for it as a firstie. So I got it. And I wear that ring now. This is that ring here. Fast forward about 5 years ago, my wife gets a phone call and said, is this James Jenkins' resident? She said, yes. I said, well, I have found your ring. They had drained my lake, and this is an older gentleman who would go out there and find jewelry and other elements, take them to pawn shops and sell them. He said the pawn shop's offered me $435 for the gold in the ring. So if you can give me that, I'll give it to him. My wife's like, wait a minute. That's my husband's ring. His name's engraved in it. Why wouldn't you just give it back to him?
Yeah.
So, well, this is how I make my living.
Yeah.
So I called my dad up. I sent my dad out. Dad, go figure out how to negotiate my ring. He says, what are you willing to pay? I said, I'll pay any amount, but maybe I don't have to pay $435.
I want my dignity.
Yeah, I know. And so my dad went out there and he negotiated with that guy. He told him the whole family story, the other kids and where everyone's at. And it got it not balking. So my dad, and he starts walking away. I'm getting this, through text.
Right.
Are you walking away? He says, this is my way. So the guy says, okay, if you give me a couple $100, you know. So I have that ring now in the safe. And
oh, wow.
So I got both rings back. And it's just, kind of a story of two rings. But and it's funny. My wife was wearing this now has double meaning. I mean, my stepfather was really tough, very, very tough on me. But he drove me academically to be eligible to get into West Point. Otherwise, I may have been doing the same bad experiments in high school.
Yeah.
But and my dad was wonderful in that regard too, of motivating me in uniquely different ways. But so it's kind of cool to have my dad negotiating to get my original ring back, my stepfather with this ring. It's just kind of a cool.
So you have two rings. One is your original, and then one is your walking around ring.
Yeah. I'm glad we didn't talk about Hugh Hefner's mansion. So I know that's a little legendary. So we'll do that next time.
What about Hugh Hefner's mansion?
You don't know that story?
No. What's the story of Hugh Hefner's mansion?
So, when we were cows, we went to play the Army-Navy football game at the Rose Bowl.
Right.
And one of my plebe roommates, he'd had the idea later, Dana Miller and I, and about two other cadets. We all had the same idea, independent of each other, to write a note to Hugh Hefner. I didn't know a soul west of the Mississippi, so I wrote Hugh Hefner a note and said, hey, can I stay with you while I'm out there? Well, he wrote us back and said yes. So, of course, I got my place I'm going to stay. It went up the chain of command. They denied it. Even Casper Weinberger got involved, I was told. He wrote us all a note saying, good initiative, you cannot stay. It's not a family environment, but you can visit.
That's funny.
So the family we got with, they were stoned the whole time. I mean, the place was...
As it was.
Yeah. And we were so worried about getting a secondhand high and, flunking the test. But anyway, real good family environment. But I did go spend half a day with Hugh Hefner, and he gave me a tour of his mansion. And
really,
it was a really cool afternoon. Yeah,
that's amazing.
But it was just a cool, just by chance thing that happened. And
did you tell Hugh that you were really disappointed because of the weed at the other place, so you might get in trouble? And he'd say, "I understand your pain, son."
I don't think I shared that with him. I was still kind of in I can't believe this is happening, And we went on a Saturday morning, so there weren't a lot of playmates running around. I had no idea what to expect. But there were.
It's just a regular house. I've been to the mansion in a more corporate environment, and when it's not a party, basically, it's just a big house.
Yeah.
But you can say you've been there. But yours is a special one. You walked around there as a cadet. Were you in uniform?
I was in dress gray.
See, that right there. See, if we had these cell phones now, you'd have all sorts of selfies. You'd be a hero.
Well, they took a picture, and I was worried that, am I going to show up in that first section of Playboy magazine? I don't know if it's going to go over well. But
Casper Weinberger. Fortunately, Casper Weinberger didn't read that magazine.
Yeah, I don't think he did.
To the best of our knowledge.
I'm not sure anyone read the magazine.
Well, it's a different era.
It is a different era, yeah.
Thanks so much, brother. It's been great talking to you.
Paul, thank you for doing this. You're doing a great job for the class.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Courage Never Quits podcast, where any member of the class of 1986 who is willing to tell their story will be a guest. To get the word out and stay up to date on the latest episodes, hit the like and subscribe button. With over 900 living graduates, we have a lot of stories to tell, and you don't want to miss any of them. We'll see you in the next episode.